Hi, great to see you, gorgeous being. I am inside today in my lounge because it's windy out there and it's just too noisy to be outside in the garden. And I keep forgetting to charge my phone, so if I run out of battery, I might have to stop a bit soon. I'm just going to get the clock so that I don't completely lose my marbles and forget about what time it is. Just organising myself here. So, because I can't be out in the garden, you know what that means? Something I haven't done for months. It means I can show you rocks. So I picked two. Got a whole collection over there. But right now, we're just going to enjoy the celestite, which if you've been watching me for many years, you will have seen before. But if you haven't, it's pretty. It's blue. It's a soft, powdery grey blue, which I really enjoy. And it's just pretty. And I like pretty, and, crystals are pretty, and what else do I need to say? And you think, I'm talking about manifestation and this God of me thing, and why am I showing rocks? Because it takes time for this Facebook Live to get out from me to the Facebook servers, and then it's got to propagate out around the world so that people can see it. And if I don't wait for that, it means, it just gives people a bit of time to get on. So I talk about rocks. And this one I just love. Can you see it's got like a little cresting wave there? It's grown up and out and sideways, and I just love it. It's got this big crystal here, which would be big enough to turn into a ring probably. You'd have to chop it up and polish it, which of course would spoil all the beauty because it's just lovely. Look at the shapes on its surface. So it's very shiny and gorgeous. And then, there's the bottom. It's been broken off something. And this one came from Madagascar. It's got a little sticker on the bottom that says MG, which I know means it came from Madagascar. So there it is. That's celestite. And the other little rock that I have to share with you today is a fluorite octahedron. Octahedron? Tetrahedron. What am I saying? So fluorite, right? And this is lovely because you can see, like, it's got lines through it, and that's very typical of fluorite. And this piece is actually it's whiter. It's white and it's kind of misty and you can't see through it. And the other side is quite transparent. It's that very typical fluorite green. And it's very ordinary, Fluorite, I think, is one of the commonest minerals on the planet. Selena! Hello, sweetie! I'm just showing off a couple of crystals because it's too windy outside to be out there. All you'd hear would be so hola. So I'm in here, and this is what I do when it's raining or when the wind is bad. So I'm showing off crystals because I got a shelf full of them over there. So this one also, if I catch the light on the face, which is proving to be difficult, did it with the other one. There we go. So you can see it's a bit more textured and patterned than the selenite, but I really like it. It may be as common as muck, but I'm very, very fond of this crystal. It's just beautiful. And you can see the planes within it. It's more obvious here if I do that. My hand's not in the way. So the light comes through it. And this is all misty and dusky and more white. And the rest of it, look, you can see there's a wavy shape in there. I just like the fact that I can look through it and see how it's grown. And you can actually sort of, no, you can't see me through it because the different facets on it actually take the light in and bend it, so you can't see me. It's not like a sphere. So those are the rocks that I'm showing off today. And now that the interweb has had time to do its magic and get this video out around the world, I'm going to start talking about what I've been doing today. So I've been writing. One Wednesday morning a week I get to write, and I write on this project that I'm doing about how to manifest stuff in your life. And the thing is that a lot of teaching and sharing about manifestation, none of which is bad, by the way. It's great when people think about it and learn and are interested. But a lot of it is about, well, you've got to know what you want, and you've got to set goals, and you've got to take targets, and you've got to take steps. And yes, you do. And you need to stay positive, and you need to stay focused on what you want in life. And all of that is true too. Because if you're negative and you're down, it's not going to happen. It really isn't. You can be negative and down and keep going, and eventually it will. But it really helps if you have you have a plan and you take steps towards the plan and you are positive about it even when things go wrong, because there are going to be challenges. And so it's, it's knowing what you want and doing something about it and managing to stay positive about it even when things don't necessarily go right. There's very practical stuff. Lots of people talk about that. But then you get these situations where people create stuff pretty much in their mind, and it just seems to come out of thin air. And many of us feel so far away from the things that we desire in life that it's kind of like, for us to get what we want, we feel like it has to come out of thin air. It's like, how can whatever it is that I want in my life possibly arrive? Because everything we look at and everything we know in our lives is just like, well, I can't see how this can happen. If you're looking for a partner, for somebody to be important in your life and to, have a relationship with, and you might think, well, I just don't know any people and I don't go in. I mean, this was my thing. Not that I have that problem. I'm blessed to be married to my soulmate. But if I wasn't, because my circle in life is really small, I don't go a lot of places. I don't meet a lot of people. I really don't. I'm quite a bit of a hermit. And if I was in that situation, thinking normally, I would think, well, I don't meet anybody and I don't go anywhere. And I meet people on the internet, but that's, that's just how it is. So how on earth am I going to meet a new significant other if I never go anywhere? And so I'm thinking within the box of what I know and what's possible, and it kind of falls out of the sky and crashes on the ground and burns up right there. So for me, in that situation, which I'm using as an example, to be thinking, well, I want to manifest a new love of my life, well, it's got to come out of nowhere, right? Because I can't see where it's coming from. It's got to come from somewhere I can't imagine, somewhere I don't know. And how do I do that? Or if you want to create money, or you want to heal your body, or you want to create a new house and you don't have the money for it, or whatever it is, how do you do that? And that's what people often think about when they think about manifestation. It's like, well, it's beyond, I can't just do it by working hard and having a goal and being positive and all of that and taking steps. Like something crazy, unusual and different has to happen for this to appear. And the other thing is that there are people, you read about them in the Bible, you read about them in various other sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita, every major religion, and the minor religions too, they all have somebody who started it off, and many of them had really mystical or frankly miraculous experiences that they had or that they did. And really, are we saying that all of that is some story that's just told? Especially when you have people in modern times where record keeping is better and there's kind of more evidence and whatever, who do the same things. It's not just 2 and 3 and 5,000 years ago. It's recent stuff as well. So what's going on with that? And when I say, how does manifestation work? That's really what I'm asking. And in this journey that I've sort of gone down the rabbit hole of saying, well, if you're going to manifest something that you can touch and experience with your body, but you're going to do that with your mind, well, you actually need to know what you're manifesting. I mean, you want something to come out of nothing? Well, what is that? It's going to be matter. But what the heck is matter? Because most of us think that matter is something that's solid and, you can hit it or you can breathe it or you can pour it or whatever. It's matter, right? And it's solid and you can't change it with your mind. Come on. And that's what I always believed. Because I didn't actually understand, and it's true, the science hadn't been done. The science, there's a much better understanding of what matter is. And over time I've talked about the fact that you can have an atom and it's got a nucleus and it's got electrons whizzing around. And when you really look at matter, which of course is made up of atoms, right? And you look at the atom and what you find is that there's stuff all in it. It's 99.9999999% space. And even the things that we say, oh, there's an electron, there's a proton, or there's a neutron, or there's a nucleus. when scientists and researchers actually measure that, what they're really measuring is some quotient of energy. There's an electrostatic charge there that's doing something. And, if you start getting all quantum on me, that electrostatic thing is there sometimes and other times it's not. It's just like a tendency. It's a thing that sort of appears to be there. And it keeps moving and changing. And all we really have is energy. And so you go further and you say, well, what about all the empty space? If there's that teeny tiny piece of energy and then there's the electrons that are whizzing around and somehow that makes up matter and there's all this space in it, what's in the space? And what's in the space is actually a whole lot of energy, but it's really disorganized. It's not organized like matter is. And cutting out a big chunk of the story, which you can find on YouTube a lot easier than you can find here, or you can find on my Patreon, by the way. Go to patreon.com/godofme, one word, and you can, if you follow for free, you can follow that journey and what I've been learning and writing about for a while now, and you can learn about it yourself. And, it's like, oh, how boring. Well, it's not really, because all the matter, or the matter is 99.9%, 99% space, and in that space is all this energy, and it's disorganized. But what I'm writing about now is, well, hang on, what if we can learn to organize it? Maybe if we can learn to organize the matter, if we understand the matter enough, if we understand what matter's made of, enough to learn how to organize it, because that's the only difference between matter and not matter, is whether the stuff that it's all made of is organized or not. Well, maybe that could be useful. Maybe we could get better at making things out of nothing, because we really realize that we're just taking something that's disorganized and organizing it into something that we want. That's what the point of it is. Because if I can do that, then I really can be God of me. I can be boss of me. I can change my life. I can do what I want. And that's what God of me is about. So, where we got to, this whole thing going down the quantum rabbit hole and all of this energy that's either organized or disorganized, and that's what makes matter or empty space. And how do you organize it? And then I was thinking, well, what is an example of how this actually works that we can relate to? And straight away, cymatics. And cymatics is really cool. And I've just been writing about cymatics this morning. And I said last week that I was going to be writing about cymatics next week. And now it's next week, and I did. And it's really cool. And cymatics is what you get when you have waveforms, which is like waves, in some kind of medium, be it water or air or gas or sand or liquid, anything that's elastic enough to move, and it makes interference patterns. Cymatic patterns are interference patterns. And you actually get interference patterns happening in solids as well. It's just one, it's hard to see them because solids aren't elastic enough to be able to show you what's going on with them. And two, because by the time the movement in the solid is big enough for you to see, it's usually big enough to pull the solid apart. Okay? It's like, boom! Because the solid's just not very elastic. It can't move enough to show the pattern. Quick revisiting, and I do this a lot, but it's important because this was my first experience of a cymatic pattern, really. It was a standing wave. It was an experiment that I did when I was at school, about probably 16. And you had a tray of water and two little motors, one at either end, and they, the motor would make this little mechanical finger tap up and down in the water. So if you have one of them going, it makes a series of concentric circles that goes out. And you think, well, that's cool. And, I've dropped a rock in a pool before now. I've seen that happen. Fine. But if you turn the other one on, you don't get two lots of circles. What you get is this weird pattern of peaks and troughs that goes up and down, and it's standing still. Even the whole thing's wriggling, but it's also standing still. The pattern doesn't move. You don't see one wave going this way and another wave going that way. You just see this pattern of bumps and of peaks and troughs. It's like, oh, it's an interference pattern. Cool. Okay. So It is really cool. Hi, Laura. It is so cool. I just love this. I never get tired of talking about it. So cymatics, right, is the same thing. And I spoke about this last week, and I put the links in the post on Patreon. There is this really cool music video with this guy called Nigel Stanford, who actually made him and his producer, they made a whole music video just using cymatics and other really cool things where sound and energy interact with matter. And the sound shapes the matter. And what is sound? It's a wave, it's a frequency, it's a vibration. So, and the connection that I'm working towards making, but I need to explain this because it's like, oh, frequency impacts matter. Well, how? What are you talking about? But if I explain now, so this video, it's just made of a number of different scientific experiments, if you like. They call them experiments, where they had to play around and find out what notes they could use to make certain cymatic effects using different pieces of equipment. I'll summarize it like that. And the first one they used, which is what I wrote about this week, and it's the biggest chunk because this is where I'm explaining the concepts, right? And then the other little, because they've got little videos after the main music video, they've got these little ones to explain the different pieces of how they did, the little bits. And the first one is about this thing called the Chladni plate. And Chladni is a weird word, and it's because I think it's a Hungarian word. It's a Hungarian name. It's the name of Dr. Chladni, who lived in 16 to 1700s. There's a link in my text to Wikipedia, but you can look up the Chladni plate, Chladni, if you want to. There's a pretty decent write-up about Chladni and what he did in Wikipedia. But the point is that the plate, it's a square piece of metal. It can be triangular or round. They all work differently. And it sits on top of a speaker, and there's a rod. The speaker's here, and there's a rod, and then the plate sits on top of it. And when you play, and there's sand that's sprinkled on the plate. And when you play the speaker, obviously the plate's going to vibrate, and the sand is going to move around. I mean, anyone can figure that out. But the interesting part is that depending on what sound the speaker plays, the sand makes shapes for some of those sounds. It doesn't make shapes for all of them. It makes shapes for some of them. They're very symmetrical and they're beautiful and they just pop out of nowhere. Like manifestation. It's like, here's a sound. And yeah, totally. Sound is powerful. Sound is resonance, right, Laura? You're totally right. So it's exactly the same. And so the Chladni plate, and I looked in the description of this first little experiment, and it says about something that I hadn't quite realized, that when the Chladni plate is making a pattern, when it's pushing the sand into patterns, there's bits of the plate, because it's in resonance, right? The sound that's playing it is making the plate resonate. It's just not going blah, blah, blah. It's actually resonating in order, in coherence. Don't those words sound familiar to you? Coherence makes emergence. Emergence makes matter out of the field. This is why this is important. But the point about the Chladni plate is that when you hit the right frequency, it resonates and it makes a pattern. And so the explanation says, well, there's places on the plate that get pushed up by that resonance. And there's other places on the plate that get pushed down. And in between them is places where the plate is not vibrating. So because of the standing wave in water, you get peaks and you get troughs in the water. And then there's places where nothing's happening. So it's the same thing. It's just on a metal plate. You can't see it. It's not elastic enough. So the plate is resonating. And some of the vibrations are going up, because remember, a wave is like this, right? So the wave goes up in some places and down in the other. And it actually, if it's the right length, it will resonate the plate. And bits of the plate go up, and they're resonating, but they're up. And bits of the plate resonate, and they go down. And there's also places on the plate where nothing is happening, because the up and the down cancel each other out when they meet. And that's where the sand gets pushed to. Those are called nodal lines. And so this is a really simple, and you can understand it. This is a simple example of how matter gets shaped by frequency. Yeah, it doesn't have a choice. It has to move. It gets pushed into different places. It is really cool. So, Laura, jump onto Patreon because I know you're one of my dear supporters, and go and take a look at the recent post because you'll find the video there and you'll be so geeked out by it. And they're only short, like the music video is like 5.5 minutes, and the little short one, you should be able to find it, but if not, holler. And it's just 1.5 minutes and explains it, and it is totally cool how they figured it out. They had to go through the frequencies and find the ones that work. And then remember, this guy is a musician and he has to write a piece of music, so they got to find notes that will go together. And imagine that with 5 or 6 or 7 different experiments where they're trying to make the sounds all fit together. It'd be a real mission to do that. And I've only talked about the first one. But the nodal lines, it was like, oh, cool. It was really, really cool. And this is how frequency shapes matter. And remember, you and I, we put frequency, we are frequency, actually. I've got to be careful about this. This is my understanding of what I find to be true and what I understand to be true. We think that we have a body and a brain, and we emit a frequency, we emit a field into the space around us, right? That's how most of us think. You know, it's your aura and it can be measured and all of that stuff. But what I understand is that I am a resonance, a sound, a frequency, or even a chord, you might say, like music. I have my own wavelength of consciousness. You're right, Laura. And that wavelength is not confined to this body, and it doesn't originate from this body. That wavelength is actually entangled with the whole of the universe, and yeah, this is head exploding time, and it emerges as matter into this body, just like the flock of starlings makes a murmuration, just like the school of fish, they work together, they make a thing that looks like one thing that's spinning or whatever it's doing. My body, similarly, is an emergence of my cymatic down into matter. And that's what I'm working towards explaining to the best of my ability. Because, you know, nobody quite knows how this works yet, but there's a lot more science about it, which is what I'm writing about on God and Me, and what I'm talking about on God and Me, and also sharing experiences of what that looks like in my real life. Because I still got to live in 3D. And yet this stuff is happening all around us, and it's also happening right inside us, because remember, your body and mine are 99.999999999% space, and so our resonance is informing all of that too, from the inside and the outside. So our resonance is like the speaker that's vibrating the Chladni plate, and this is like sand, and our life is like the sand. And if you turn the dial and change the frequency, you get a different pattern. But not every frequency will do it, because the pattern's a certain length, right? And the wave's got to be the right length too. It's got to be the same. I think it has to be the same. It has to be the size that will resonate that plate, and it might even be the same wavelength, or half of the wavelength, or I think a third, a quarter. There are specific geometric relationships about how long the wave will be that will resonate the plate. And when the wavelength is long, the shape, the pattern that the plate makes, the sand on the plate makes, is really quite simple. And the faster the frequency, the more complex the pattern goes. And you'll see that on the little experiment explanation videos, and you'll also see it, if you know how to look, you will see it in Nigel Stanford's fabulous video as well. It's so cool. But this is how it works, and it's a great way for us to try to get our heads and hearts around the fact that you are a cymatic. I'm a cymatic. And this is the sand on the plate. This is not the speaker. You and I are the resonances coming through the speaker, and if you like, the speaker is the entire universe, and we are resonating all of it. As such, we happen to be a flock of starlings here. This is my perspective. This is what is true for me. May not be true for anyone else. So it's amazing. I love this. And after the last pieces that I've been putting together, which have been really quite challenging, but I've managed to put a string of pearls together that actually makes sense to me, because as I've been saying recently, because this has been quite difficult, I will not make shit up. I want this to be real. I want to actually be able to say, okay, I can believe in this. This is based on facts that I've researched, and not big wild theories, but things that actually have experimental validation. Because for me, it's really important that it makes sense. You know, it shouldn't be some great esoteric, oh, I've just got to think the right way and I've got to magnetize and I've got to be positive. I mean, that's all great, but how does it actually work? And this is the first clue to me. I mean, there's a lot of clues, but this is something that I think most of you would find relatable. That, you know, there's a resonance, and when you hit the right resonance, the sand on the plate changes its pattern. So if we can learn how to change our resonance, if we don't like the pattern that we are creating in our lives, maybe it's not about going out there and saying, I need that, or I need that person to change, or I, you know, whatever. Maybe we have to change our resonance. And yes, we do that from in here. That's actually the reason why we are here. It's because this is the place where you can change stuff, believe it or not. It's a lot harder to change stuff out there because everything is one. Everything is oneness. And when there's oneness, there's no change. There's no before and after. There's no up and down. There's no in and out. It's all one. You've got to come into polarity to have an experience, to make a change. Really, you know, just, you know, by the way, that's why we're here. So this concept to me is so entrancing and so wow and so empowering. Because if I really am a cymatic in the unified field and this is an outpicturing of who I am, then if I can change that resonance, if I can change that frequency, which is expressed in how I think and what I do and how I feel every minute, every day, if I can change that, I'm going to change my life. And I do see in my life and in the lives of others that is absolutely true. And I first learned that from my work with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I continue to practice that and see that it's true. But this journey with God and me, I'm finding more of the science about how that turns into matter. And that's very exciting to me because it just, I mean, he talks about it, but somehow I needed to get my head around it in this different way for myself. So that's my journey. I'm out of time, folks, but I so love hanging out here with you and talking about this. If you haven't checked out my Patreon, go and have a look. There is a lot that's available for free. And if you, just for signing up and following me, and if you want to support me, what you will gain from that is extra inside insights about what this is like for me living my life, my journey, and what it looks like in practice. And you can also ask me questions, which I will enjoy and love to answer. So check it out if you haven't seen it before. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. Big love. I look forward to seeing you on Patreon. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, I appreciate you big time. And I'll see you next week with more. Until then, much love.